My blood seemed to freeze in my veins as I watched my mother-in-law and a strange man rolling around intimately on the floor of the heritage study. A room so deeply revered in our home. Without a second thought, I recorded the video, cast it directly to the 8.5-inch flat-screen TV in the living room, calmly brewed a pot of premium tea, and invited my father-in-law in to watch a drama unfold. Why me? A daughter-in-law who had always been known as submissive and patient, how could I dare to commit such a reckless act that would destroy this family's entire reputation? The answer lies in the sickeningly hypocritical veil of morality my mother-in-law had painstakingly built over the years. My name is Mia. I am 30 years old, and I currently serve as a branch manager at a major investment bank in Manhattan, New York. My husband, Aaron, is a civil engineer working for the city government. He makes a modest salary but constantly boasts about his status as a dedicated public servant with a pension. My father-in-law, Richard Sterling, is a retired U.S. Marine Corps general, highly patriarchal, strict, and a man who places family honor and American traditions above all else. My mother-in-law, Susan Sterling, is viewed by our neighbors and relatives as the epitome of a perfect woman, a role model who upholds etiquette and proper Christian values. She is the president of the Homeowners Association, always dressed modestly, wearing her signature pearl necklace, her mouth constantly spouting wise advice and lecturing others on how to live righteously. Ever since I married her son, she has used that exact moral standard to pressure and control me in every little detail of my life. Even though I am the primary breadwinner, covering all living expenses from the utility bills to the lavish holiday parties she hosts for our relatives. She constantly berates me as the type of career woman who only cares about money and is incompetent at running a household. In the grand, 3-story mansion in an elite gated community in Westchester County, which I bought with my own hard-earned money, Susan naturally crowned herself queen. She created dozens of strict rules. The daughter-in-law must immediately change clothes and cook as soon as she gets home from Wall Street. On weekends, sleeping in is forbidden. And I must clean the house from top to bottom. Above all, the heritage study on the 3rd floor was strictly off-limits. My father-in-law is deeply traditional. He personally selected every piece of antique mahogany furniture in that room, demanding it remain a pristine shrine to his military medals, ancestral oil paintings, and the folded American flags of his forefathers. Susan took it upon herself to clean the heritage study, forbidding me from stepping foot inside. Her excuse? I often came home late from the city, bringing in dirty corporate energy that was unfit to enter the sacred space of the Sterling family's ancestors. I endured all of this not because I feared her, but because I wanted to maintain the illusion of harmony in this marriage and protect Aaron's ego as a man. However, human patience has its limits, and hypocrisy cannot be hidden forever. Recently, I noticed that some expensive diamond jewelry and a few solid gold American Eagle bars I kept in a small safe in my home office were slowly disappearing. When I asked about it, Susan immediately threw a fit. She slammed her hands on the table, accused our Hispanic part-time housekeeper of being a thief, and fired her in the most humiliating way possible. She then turned her wrath on me, calling me a careless woman who couldn't even keep track of her own meager possessions, causing an uproar in the house. To protect my assets and find the real thief, I secretly hired an expert to install a micro-security camera hidden inside the air purifier in my office. I placed another one in a hidden corner of the 3rd-floor hallway, pointing directly at the door of the heritage study. I didn't tell anyone, not even Aaron. And on that Friday afternoon, the real hurricane arrived, ripping away every disgusting mask in this house. It was around 3 p.m. I had just finished a tense board meeting at the bank. Feeling exhausted, I decided to pack up and head home early to rest. As usual, I opened the security app on my phone to check on the house. The screen buffered for a few seconds, and the sight that greeted me nearly made me drop my phone onto the marble floor of my office. On the screen, from the angle of the 3rd-floor hallway camera, my mother-in-law, Susan, was wearing a sheer, transparent silk nightgown, something I had never even seen her wear in her own private bedroom. She was opening the door to the heritage study, but the horrifying part was that she wasn't alone. Pressed tightly behind her was a burly man in his 50s, wearing a dark polo shirt. The man wrapped his arms tightly around Susan's waist from behind, burying his face in her neck. The two of them walked in, giggling intimately. They pushed the heavy oak door open and stepped inside. The door closed, but it didn't latch entirely. From the micro-camera's angle, I could clearly see a portion of the floor inside the study. The blood in my veins turned to ice. I held my breath and zoomed in on the screen. The man had pinned Susan right on top of the antique Persian rug that my father-in-law used to kneel on to polish his metals and reflect every evening. The filthy image and the lustful groans caught by the camera's microphone echoed right beneath the Sterling family's ancestral portraits. Nausea and disgust rose in my throat. The woman who constantly lectured me about modesty, about being a dutiful wife, the woman who banned me from the heritage study because she feared I would defile it, was now bringing her adulterous body and her lover to smear the entire family's honor in its most sacred place. This was an unforgivable desecration. I immediately hit the record button on the app, saving the entire sickening video into a hidden folder on my phone. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a phenomenal rage that had now turned into a cold, burning fire. They had crossed the line. I packed my bag, gave instructions to my secretary, canceled all my afternoon appointments, and rushed to the elevator down to the garage. My car sped down the New York highways. My mind was working at full capacity. I could have just stormed up to the third floor, kicked the door open, and caught them red-handed. But no, that method was too cheap and too easy for her. She would cry, make up excuses, and use her status as a mother-in-law to force me into silence to protect the family's reputation. A traitor must be exposed to the public, in the most ruthless and absolute way possible. I needed an audience with the power to destroy her. And there was no one more perfect than my father-in-law, General Richard Sterling. When I arrived at the gates of the estate, I noticed an unfamiliar Harley-Davidson motorcycle parked in a hidden spot behind the lush hydrangea bushes. It had to belong to the lover. I unlocked the front door with my fingerprint as quietly as possible. The house was dead silent, feeling eerily tense. My father-in-law was in the glass greenhouse out back, busy pruning his prized rose collection, completely unaware of the filthy drama taking place right above his head. I slipped off my heels and walked barefoot into the living room. The spacious room was equipped with an 8.5-inch LED smart TV. I turned it on, lowered the volume to the perfect level, and used my phone to cast my screen. With just a few taps, the live feed from the third-floor security camera was displayed massive and crystal clear in the center of the room. The video was still broadcasting live. The two figures were still rolling around, completely oblivious to the world. Calmly, I walked to the mahogany cabinet and took out a tin of rare vintage Darjeeling, the premium loose-leaf tea my father-in-law loved most. I casually boiled water and brewed a pot. The sound of pouring water mingling with the sickening noises coming from the TV created a deeply ironic and bizarre atmosphere. When the aroma of the tea filled the living room, I slowly walked out to the backyard. "Richard, I just got home from work. I brewed a fresh pot of that Darjeeling you love. Let's head inside, have some tea, and rest for a bit. It looks like there's a really fascinating documentary playing on the TV." "Oh? You're home early today," he replied. "All right, let me wash my hands and I'll be right there. You always make the tea exactly how I like it." Susan said she was tired and wanted to nap in her room earlier. "She's probably still out cold." "Yes, Richard. It's good she's resting. Come inside quickly, the show is getting to the best part." Richard slowly wiped his hands on the small towel hanging from his belt, then strolled casually after me into the living room. He walked in, rubbing his hands together with the relaxed expression of a retired man enjoying his afternoon. But the moment he stepped over the threshold, the smile on his lips froze instantly. The teacup I had just poured vibrated slightly on the glass coffee table. Richard was rooted to the spot. His eyes widened so far they looked like they might tear. His gaze was locked onto the giant TV screen in front of him. On the crystal-clear 8.5-inch display, his wife, the woman who constantly preached about Christian modesty, was now completely naked, writhing beneath a burly man. And the background was none other than his antique oak desk, his Persian rug, and the majestic shrine of the Sterling family's heritage. The sound of skin slapping and breathless panting echoed clearly through the expensive surround sound speakers, filling the entire room. Richard's jaw dropped, his breath catching in his chest. His normally ruddy complexion turned deathly pale, then rapidly flushed crimson with peaking fury. Both his fists clenched so tightly that the blue veins bulged clearly against his skin. "What the hell is this, Mia? What kind of trash are you playing in my house? That is it. Just watch closely, Richard. I wouldn't dare play anything inappropriate. This is the new security camera system I installed in the third-floor hallway to prevent burglaries. I just didn't expect to record Susan fighting off a burglar with such intense enthusiasm. Right inside our heritage study. My God. That cursed woman. That whore. She dared bring a man into my house to act like animals, right? Beneath my father's portrait?" Richard's roar thundered like a lightning strike, shattering the quiet afternoon. It was a roar filled with the humiliation of a betrayed patriarchal man, and an infinite wrath ignited when his family's honor and convictions were trampled in the filthiest way possible. He slammed his fist down onto the glass table, making the tea set jump. Hot tea spilled everywhere. At the exact same time, perhaps because Richard's roar was loud enough to carry to the third floor, the noises on the TV abruptly stopped. The man on the screen panicked, rolling off Susan and scrambling to grab his slacks. Susan panicked too, snatching up her nightgown. Her face on the camera displayed absolute, unadulterated terror. I calmly lifted my teacup and took a small sip. The bitter taste of the tea spread over my tongue. The greatest drama in this house was now truly beginning. My father-in-law's roar had barely faded, yet the grand house seemed to vibrate. Richard didn't say another word. He currently looked exactly like a severely wounded, wild beast. His hand quickly snatched the heavy, solid oak walking cane he used for his morning strolls from the corner of the room. With a terrifying strength you wouldn't expect from a man in his 60s, he bolted out of the living room, stomping up the marble stairs. Every step hit the floor hard, carrying the boundless rage, shame, and fury of a man who had staked his entire life on two words: pride and honor. I didn't follow him. I remained sitting quietly on the expensive leather sofa, casually lifting my teacup to take another sip. The tea had cooled a little. The bitter aftertaste lingered in my throat, exactly what I had been forced to taste throughout my time as a daughter-in-law in this house. I stared at the giant TV screen. The live feed from the third-floor hallway turned chaotic. The heavy oak door of the heritage study, previously left slightly ajar, was suddenly kicked open with tremendous force. The solid wood slammed against the brick wall, creating a deafening crack. The hinges sounded like they snapped. Immediately after, a massive commotion from the top floor could be heard crystal clear. Without needing to see it firsthand, I could imagine the tragic, humiliating scene unfolding inside that sacred room. The sound of the wooden cane slicing through the air, the crashing of breaking objects, surely the antique porcelain vases. The decorative trays I was forced to scrub spotless every Thanksgiving under my mother-in-law's strict supervision were now being smashed to pieces. Amidst the blind destruction, Susan's piercing scream rang out. Her scream no longer held the arrogant tone she used when lecturing me every day. It was the sound of absolute panic from someone caught committing the ultimate sin. Richard, listen to me. It's not what you think. Don't hit me. You're going to kill me. My mother-in-law's cries and pleas echoed across the entire floor. It sounded incredibly pathetic, but I felt not a single ounce of pity. My heart had turned to stone long ago. I remembered the freezing winter nights when I returned from work, exhausted by the intense targets on Wall Street, and she would stand at the door, forcing me to take off my coat and scrub it with freezing water in the sink just because she saw a tiny speck of dirt. I remembered the times she badmouthed me to the HOA wives, branding me a barren career woman, when in reality, the fertility issues lay entirely with her son. All that bitterness and injustice would be paid in full today. Not a single cent short. Just a few minutes later, the sound of heavy, dragging footsteps echoed from the stairs. I slowly put down my teacup, smoothed my skirt, and looked toward the main entryway. The sight before me looked like a caricature of karmic retribution. My father-in-law, his face twisted in pure wrath, had his left hand tangled in Susan's perfectly coiffed hair. His right hand gripped the oak cane. He was dragging the most powerful woman in this house down from the 3rd floor to the 1st. Susan currently looked so wretched that no one would ever recognize her as the esteemed HOA president. She had only managed to wrap a thin, white American heritage quilt, likely ripped from the display chair in the study, around her body. The quilt was torn and slipping, exposing the wrinkles of her skin and the angry red welts left by the cane. Her hair was a bird's nest. Her wrinkle-filled face was drenched in tears and snot. She was dragged down every single step. Her bare feet were scraped and bruised. Her mouth never stopped whimpering, begging for mercy. Richard dragged his adulterous wife to the center of the living room, right in front of me, and threw her down violently. The strength of a former Marine sent Susan sprawling across the cold marble floor, sliding a few inches before her back slammed into the leg of the glass table. Thud! Her whole body curled up like an earthworm, tossed in boiling water. Filthy animal. What have I ever done to you that you had to bring this disgrace into my house? Huh? You live a comfortable life off my pension. Off my daughter-in-law's money. You live like a queen. And you repay me by bringing a man into the Sterling family heritage room to commit adultery? My father-in-law roared, his eyes bloodshot. He raised the wooden cane high, ready to bring it down on his wife's body one more time. Susan panicked, throwing both her hands up to cover her head, cowering, her mouth stuttering incoherent words. She didn't dare look at Richard, and she certainly didn't dare look at me, sitting arrogantly on the sofa, coldly watching her total destruction. Richard, I'm begging you. Richard, I was wrong. I made a mistake, Richard. Forgive me. Think of the family's reputation. Think of the kids, she sobbed. Crocodile tears streamed down her face. Her petty excuses made me even more nauseous. In a situation like this, caught red-handed with undeniable proof, she still dared to use the words reputation and use her children as a shield. My father-in-law let out a cynical laugh, a laugh overflowing with bitterness and contempt. Reputation? You still know what a reputation is? When you were spread wide open in front of another man, right in the spot where I honor my forefathers. Were you thinking about our reputation? Today, I am going to end you, you whore. I should shave your head and parade you around this gated community so everyone can see your true face. He raised his cane again. But this time, I knew I couldn't let a murder happen in the house under my name. Revenge must be executed with a cool head, so the perpetrator suffers alive under the law and public opinion, not by sending an old man to prison. I slowly stood up, took a step forward, and spoke in a sharp, flat tone. Richard, calm your anger. Killing her now will only dirty my floors. You hit her, you go to jail. That's too good of a deal for a tramp. What we need to do now isn't beat her, but see exactly which man joined her in trampling the Sterling family's honor. My words were like ice water poured over Richard's blinding rage. He stopped. The wooden cane hovered in the air, then slowly lowered. He was panting heavily. His chest heaved up and down. His gaze shifted from the woman sprawled on the floor, to me, and then toward the staircase. Right. The lover. The man who dared step into his house, sleep with his wife, in his territory. Richard's anger seemed to find a new, more concrete target, one, far more deserving of his hatred. The living room fell dead silent. Susan's sobs on the floor sounded increasingly pathetic and fake. My father-in-law stood, leaning heavily on his cane. His eyes, as sharp as daggers, stared into the dark stairwell. He didn't need to go up to catch the man. His entrance earlier, along with the rain of blows that landed on Susan, was enough to scare the man half to death. From the top floor, slow, hesitant footsteps could be heard. The man knew he had no way out. This house was designed with a closed security system. Every window had heavy wrought iron grates. The only way out was through the living room, where we were waiting. With every passing second, the footsteps grew closer, heavy, and trembling. Then, a figure appeared from the bend in the staircase. The sight of the lover emerging almost made me burst into laughter due to the incredible irony of fate. The man who, just moments ago, was passionately embracing my mother-in-law in the heritage study, now looked as pathetic as a cornered rat. He was wearing a dark, wrinkled polo shirt. His buttons were mismatched. His slacks had been pulled on so hastily that his zipper wasn't fully closed. His shaking hands were clutching a pair of muddy loafers. His head was bowed, not daring to make eye contact with anyone. But what made the atmosphere in the living room freeze entirely? What made my father-in-law drop his solid oak cane with a loud clang on the floor wasn't the man's pathetic appearance. It was his face. As he stepped down to the final stair, the light from the crystal chandelier hit his sweating face, illuminating his characteristic bald forehead and his beady, calculating eyes. My father-in-law took 2 steps back, his lips trembling violently. He pointed directly at the man's face. His voice choked, completely unable to process what he was seeing. It was Tom. Tom, the vice president of the HOA. Our next-door neighbor. And most agonizingly of all, he was Richard's brother-in-arms, a man who had shed blood with him, eaten from the same MREs, and fought alongside my father-in-law for years in the Marines. Tom was the man who came over every Sunday morning to play chess, drink bourbon, and discuss politics and morality with Richard. Tom was the one who recommended Susan for the HOA presidency, constantly praising her as the most exemplary woman in the neighborhood. The truth was laid bare, naked, and cruel. A cheating wife is already a catastrophic disgrace. But a wife cheating with your best friend, right under your nose, inside your own house, is the most venomous betrayal that can obliterate a man's pride. Richard turned to stone. The explosive rage from moments before mutated into a soul-tearing agony. He looked at Tom, then down at Susan curled up on the floor. The 2 people he trusted and respected most were the very knives stabbing him in the back. Tom. It's you. It was you. Richard's voice was hoarse and broken. I treated you like my own blood brother. I shared everything with you. And you repay me by sleeping with my wife? How long have you two? How long have you been playing me? Tom trembled so violently that he dropped his loafers. He collapsed to his knees on the bottom step. He clasped his hands together, begging for mercy. His aging face wrinkled in absolute terror. He possessed none of the authority of an HOA VP, nor an ounce of the bravery of a former Marine. In front of Richard, he was nothing but a coward stripped of his mask. Richard, brother. Forgive me. I was wrong. I made a mistake. I never meant to destroy your family. It was all Susan. She's the one who seduced me. She said you were old and weak. That you couldn't satisfy her anymore. She said she was lonely, that's why she came to me to vent. I was drunk, Richard. I couldn't control myself. For the sake of our brotherhood, spare me this once. I'm begging you. The cowardly confession from the lover was like a bucket of boiling water dumped on Susan, who was still crying on the floor. Hearing her lover turn around, throw her under the bus, and explicitly expose her complaints about her weak husband, Susan reacted like she'd been stung by a wasp. The shame of being caught red-handed instantly vanished, replaced by the lowest survival instinct of a cornered human. She stood up, forgetting to hold up the sagging quilt. She pointed straight at Tom's face and shrieked, "You bastard! You're framing me. Don't you dare blame me. You clearly seduced me. You took advantage of the times Richard was at the VFW lodge to hit on me. You promised to buy me a lake house. You even extorted my money for your gambling debts. Now you're caught, and you want to wash your hands of it? Richard, don't believe him. He played me, Richard." The scene of the adulterous couple attacking each other played out right in front of me, so naked and pathetic it made me sick. They were willing to trample each other, expose each other's deepest filth, and reveal the most disgusting truths just to save their own fake moral masks. Tom's words about Richard's weakness were a dagger straight to my father-in-law's ego. Richard didn't say anything else. His face was ash-white, his lips pressed so tightly together they bled. The pain, shame, and anger had bypassed the limits of what an old man could endure. He stumbled backward a few steps, his hand clutching the left side of his chest. His breathing grew rapid and heavy. He collapsed onto the sofa beside him. His dull eyes stared blankly ahead, as if his entire belief system and life principles had been pulverized. I stood there, arms crossed, calmly observing this pathetic play. I felt no pity for my father-in-law. His patriarchal attitude and his blind protection of empty family traditions were exactly what gave my mother-in-law the space to act like a tyrant. Nor did I care about the cheating couple's squabble. All I cared about right now was hammering the final nail into my mother-in-law's coffin of arrogance. The truth about the affair was only half the story. The other half was about my assets, which she had embezzled for her lover. I was going to blow it all up today. Richard, you have to believe me. I've served this family my whole life. I'm the HOA president. Everyone respects me. How could I do something so vile? This has to be a setup. Yes, this is Mia's conspiracy. This daughter-in-law framed me. She hates me because I always try to guide her, so she intentionally wants to destroy this family. You still dare open your mouth to blame your daughter-in-law? Richard rasped. The camera is crystal clear. Your voice, your face. You were buck naked, rolling around on my father's shrine. And you say you were framed? Do you think I'm blind? Do you think I'm an idiot you can play? You incurable whore. Richard. You've been a soldier your whole life, you don't know how advanced technology is today. Mia works on Wall Street. She knows tech people. This is digitally altered, what do they call it? A deep fake. She took my face and pasted it onto another woman's body to frame me. And Tom. Mia must have paid him to play along and trick you. How could I possibly have an affair with Tom? Are you going to believe your daughter-in-law over your own wife? Susan, I am genuinely impressed by you. At this very moment, you are barely clothed. Your lover is still shivering on his knees over there. Yet you can still fabricate a sci-fi, deepfake script to frame me. You watch too many movies. Shut up, you venomous snake. You're jealous of my position in this house. That's why you want to get rid of me, right? You want to divide my husband and me, so you can control Aaron and steal the Sterling family's wealth. Richard, look at her, she's smiling. She's a demon. Call the police, Richard. Have her arrested for slander and defamation. Shut up, Richard barked. You still dare mention the police? You want the cops to come here and see you naked with Tom in my study? You want this disgrace broadcasted to the whole neighborhood? Do you think I haven't been humiliated enough, Susan? Richard, let Susan call the cops if she wants to. I highly encourage it, I said smoothly. Susan says I used video manipulation tech, right? Then how do you explain the quilt from the study currently wrapped around your body? How do you explain Tom kneeling right here with his pants half unzipped? Is my deepfake technology so advanced that it materialized a hologram into a living, breathing man in our living room? You drugged me. Yes, you slipped me roofies. Then you called Tom over. You stripped me naked to stage this scene. That's right. I drank the orange juice you left on the counter this afternoon, and suddenly I was so sleepy. When I woke up, Tom was already here. You poisoned me. You're a murderer. Susan, if you're going to lie, at least use your brain. I left for the city at the crack of dawn. How could I have made you orange juice this afternoon? Besides, if I drugged you, how were you able to walk, open the study door, and participate so enthusiastically and proactively with Tom? This security camera records in 4K resolution directly to a cloud server, complete with untamperable date and time stamps. If you'd like, I can invite a digital forensics expert from the NYPD to examine the data. We'll see if you were drugged, or if you threw yourself at him willingly. You just want to ruin me. You won't be satisfied until this family is torn apart. Richard, look. You're harboring an enemy. She bought this house, she thinks she has money, so she looks down on us. Now she's using her money to bribe Tom and frame me. Tom, tell him. How much money did Mia pay you to commit this heinous act and destroy me? Don't drag your daughter-in-law into your filth. Richard yelled. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. I heard your sweet talk to him with my own ears. Your groans, I've known you for 30 years. You think I don't know your voice? Tom already confessed that you seduced him. You insulted me, called me weak. You brought my money to fund him. How much longer are you going to deny it? Exactly, I cut in. If Susan insists she was framed, then let me show you one more piece of evidence. Perhaps that video only proves her infidelity, but it doesn't quite capture her boundless greed. Susan, do you remember the American Eagle gold bars and the diamond set that vanished from my office safe? You blamed the housekeeper and fired her. But you didn't know, did you, that Tom here is the one who took that gold to a pawn shop in the Diamond District to sell for cash last week? Let me show Richard the bank statements and the romantic text you sent Tom planning the wire transfers. Go ahead, Susan, keep denying it. Let's see if you can argue with bank wire records that have your own name on them. The atmosphere in the living room grew thick. Suffocating. As if a single breath could trigger an explosion. Richard sat motionless on the sofa. His bloodshot eyes glared at the large television, where the feed of the quiet heritage study was still playing, carrying the most devastating destructive power imaginable. My mother-in-law was sprawled on the floor. The white quilt wrapped around her was rumpled, exposing her wrinkled skin and red welts. She was no longer screaming, no longer cursing. Only stifled sobs could be heard. A few feet away, Tom the lover disguised as the HOA VP, my father-in-law's brother-in-arms, was still kneeling on the floor. Both his hands covered his head. His burly body shook like a stray dog hit with freezing rain. Casually, I placed my teacup on the glass table. The clink of ceramic against glass was sharp and dry, shattering the deadly silence. I pulled an iPad from my designer handbag. The screen lit up, casting a cold blue glow onto my face. I swiped the screen, opening a folder I had neatly organized and encrypted weeks ago. Richard, I know the footage earlier was already a devastating blow, but I believe it's better to endure the pain once and excise this malignant tumor entirely, rather than let it slowly drain the blood and marrow from this family. You always taught us to live honestly and cleanly. That the Sterling family's honor is priceless. But the woman you call your wife, lying there on the floor, didn't just use your honor as a doormat, she used her daughter-in-law's sweat and blood to fund her lover. Look at this. I placed the iPad on the table, turning the screen toward my father-in-law. Displayed there were a series of image files, bank statements, and WhatsApp chat screenshots saved in high definition. Richard slowly leaned forward. His calloused, veiny hands, the hands of a combat veteran, trembled as they touched the screen. The first was a copy of Susan's personal checking account at Chase Bank. A woman with no pension, no income source other than the $3,000 I transferred to her every month for household expenses. Yet over the last 6 months, her account showed highly irregular activity. Look at these transactions, Richard. March 15th, a wire of $20,000. April 8th, a wire of $35,000. April 20th, another wire of $50,000. In less than half a year, a total of $150,000 vanished from her account. The transfer memos were generic. Loan repayment. Materials. Land purchase. But the recipient was always the same. An account under the name Thomas Miller. Tom, who is kneeling right there. I swiped to the next image. It was a property deed for a half-acre lot near Lake George in upstate New York. The name on the deed was Thomas Miller, but the bank transaction for the purchase came directly from Susan. Richard stared wide-eyed at the numbers. His breathing grew shallower, as if invisible hands were strangling him. I moved to the next file. This is the final nail. WhatsApp conversations I secretly backed up from Susan's old iPhone, the one she claimed she forgot the password to. The disgusting messages are right here. Susan, Tom, the old man has an all-day veterans meeting today. Come over this afternoon, I miss you. Tom, yes, my general. Did you get more gold from that stupid daughter-in-law of yours? I need cash to pay the contractors for our cabin at the lake. Susan, don't worry, she's so gullible. She keeps 5 gold bars in her safe. I just took 2. Yesterday I accused the Hispanic maid of stealing. She bought it completely and fired her on the spot. Come over later and I'll give them to you to sell. Don't forget my hot reward. Ha ha. Tom, love my general the most. That old fossil Richard can't do anything for you anymore. Only I know how to keep you satisfied. Once the cabin is built, I'll take you there to be my queen. Every line of text that appeared on the iPad hit my father-in-law's ego like a sledgehammer. Richard read every word. His eyes bulged, the red veins popping. He gasped for air. His jaw clamped shut so hard it made a terrifying grinding noise. I suspected something for a long time, I said. Money kept disappearing. The grocery bills were inflated 3 to 4 times. But I pretended not to know, because I thought, she is my husband's mother, the woman who gave birth to Aaron. I didn't want family drama. It wasn't until the diamond set I planned to gift a VIP client and the solid gold bars vanished from my safe that I quietly started investigating. It turns out my kindness and patience became an endless ATM for my mother-in-law to fund another man. And worse, that man was your best friend. Tom, kneeling on the floor. Hearing this, Tom finally broke completely. He banged his forehead against the marble floor. Thud. Thud. Blood began to trickle down his brow. His mouth didn't stop wailing. Richard, I'm begging you. I'll give it all back. I'll sell the land and return every cent. Don't go to the police. Don't tell my wife and kids. I beg you, I'll be your slave for the rest of my life to pay for my sins. Susan, cowering under the table, having heard the undeniable financial proof, no longer had the strength to play the deepfake card. She reached out with her bruised, trembling hand, gripping the hem of my father-in-law's trousers. Her voice was faint and broken. Richard, I was wrong. I messed up. I was blinded by his sweet talk. I beg you, Richard. Remember our 30 years of marriage. For Aaron's sake, please, give me a way to live. I crossed my arms, staring straight at the woman who had tormented me with her power. 30 years of marriage. And she so easily used it as a bargaining chip after ruthlessly trampling on it. The $150,000 and the gold bars were just the equivalent of a few corporate bonuses to me, but what I wanted wasn't the money. I wanted the total annihilation of the fake moral mask that had tortured me for years. My father-in-law was a man who valued his honor more than his life. This ironclad evidence didn't just prove Susan was a cheater, it proved she was a thief and a scammer of the lowest, most despicable order. The verdict from Richard was guaranteed to be far more ruthless than any court judgment. The silence in the living room grew so heavy you could cut it with a knife. Richard remained motionless on the sofa. His eyes were glued to the iPad, displaying the repulsive texts. His chest heaved, but he didn't say a word. Susan's sobs and Tom's whimpering pleas were gut-wrenching. Right at that moment, the familiar sound of a car engine pulled into the driveway, followed by the squeak of tires. The front door unlocked, and Aaron, my husband, walked in wearing his standard ill-fitting city bureaucrat suit, carrying a worn leather briefcase. He walked in whistling, tossing his shoes carelessly onto the rack, completely oblivious to the earthquake waiting for him. Mom, what's for dinner? I'm starving. Back-to-back meetings at City Hall all day. I'm exhausted. Oh, Mia, you're home. Why is it so quiet in here? His cheerful voice echoed into the silence. As he stepped past the glass partition and into the living room, the smile instantly vanished from his lips. His briefcase hit the floor. Aaron froze, his eyes wide, scanning the normally pristine, luxurious room. His father sat on the sofa, radiating a murderous aura, his hand gripping an oak cane. His mother, the most powerful woman in the house, was sprawled on the floor, wrapped in a torn quilt, hair a mess, her body covered in red welts. Not far away, Tom, the HOA VP and close family friend, was kneeling on the floor in wrinkled clothes with a bleeding forehead. And on the massive television, the feed of the Sterling Family Heritage Study with its door kicked wide open was still broadcasting clearly. What? What is this? Dad? Mom, what happened? Tom, why are you on your knees? Aaron stuttered, his voice trailing off in sheer confusion. He rushed over to Susan, reaching out to help her up. Mom, why are you like this? Who hit you? Was it her? Aaron suddenly whipped his head toward me. His eyes flashed with anger, the exact same default reaction he had whenever there was a conflict between me and his mother. Mia, what did you do in this house? Ho! You think because you make money, you can just beat my mother? Have you completely disrespected this family? Dad, why are you letting her do whatever she wants? I laughed. A cynical laugh that sounded bitter but felt incredibly satisfying. The man I called my husband, whom I lived with for 5 years. Faced with a scene this glaringly obvious, his first instinct was still to blindly blame me and defend his mother. His weak, spoiled nature never failed to make me sick. I crossed my arms, tilted my chin toward the giant TV, and pointed at the iPad on the table. Aaron, before you accuse me, you should use that city planner brain of yours to look at the facts. No one hit your mother except your own father. And as for why your father hit her, just look at the TV screen, then read every text message on that iPad. Read them carefully. So you know exactly what your pure, honorable mother was doing on the rug in your ancestral study. Aaron frowned, his face full of doubt. He approached the glass table, his eyes darting from the TV to the iPad. I could see his Adam's apple bobbing. He picked up the iPad, skimming the clips I had cut, the wire transfer receipts, and the texts calling each other my general. And then, Aaron's hands began to shake violently. His face went dead pale. His eyes were glued to the screen, unable to believe what he was reading. No way. Mom? Mom, what is this? This is a joke, right? You and Tom in the study? The money and the gold? Mom, explain. Tell me this is just a misunderstanding. Aaron turned to Susan, his voice cracking, pleading. Susan didn't dare lift her face to look at her son. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Tom beside her was completely mute, keeping his head down. Their silence was the cruelest answer Aaron could receive. The curtain of the respectable, civilized family, the image of the exemplary mother, collapsed entirely before his eyes. Aaron stumbled backward, dropping the iPad onto the sofa. He gripped his head, messing up his carefully gelled hair. But what disgusted me most wasn't his weakness, it was his subsequent reaction, the reaction of a true coward. Aaron wasn't furious at the man who betrayed his father. Nor did he feel guilty knowing his wife's hard-earned money had been stolen by his own mother to fund an affair. Suddenly, he turned to his father and fell to his knees beside his mother. Dad, calm down. Dad, this can't get out. I'm up for a promotion to deputy director at City Hall soon. If you make a scene, if you get a divorce or kick Mom out, our family's reputation will be ruined. The whole neighborhood will laugh at us. If my office finds out, how will I ever show my face again? Dad, for the sake of the woman who gave birth to me, forgive her this once. Let's just sweep this under the rug and handle it privately. Then, he turned to me. His eyes were a mix of hatred and begging. Mia, delete that video right now. Will you only be happy when this family is destroyed? I'll pay you back the money. Mom took out of my own salary. I'll pay it in installments. Just don't blow this out of proportion. You're the daughter-in-law. You should know how to protect your husband's family name. Are you purposely trying to ruin my career? I stared in absolute silence at the man kneeling on the floor. It was hilariously absurd. An adulterer and a thief, a pathetic lover, and a cowardly, selfish husband who only cared about a middle management promotion and his tattered family reputation. They truly were a perfect cluster of parasites. Living off my labor and my patience, I took a deep breath, feeling an immense sense of relief in my chest. Finally, I could see the rotten core of this entire family. I no longer had to pretend for the sake of any mask. I walked to the table, grabbed the USB drive containing the original files, dropped it into my handbag, and looked at Aaron. My gaze now held only the icy detachment of someone looking at a pile of garbage. I didn't answer him. Instead, I looked straight at Richard, who had been silently observing his own son's cowardice. Would a man who had put his life on the line, a proud Marine like him, accept such a pathetic plea from his son? Would he accept spending the rest of his life with a cheating wife and a traitorous best friend just for reputation? And I knew the true verdict from this patriarchal man was about to be delivered. "Shut your damn mouth, Aaron!" Richard roared. "You're my son. You carry the sterling blood, but you are so pathetic and cowardly that you'd kneel and beg for a whore who brought another man to defile your grandfather's shrine? Is your cheap little deputy director title worth more than my honor? Worth more than your ancestors? Open your eyes and look at how your mother and that bastard desecrated this house. Reputation? My reputation was ripped to shreds and thrown in the gutter by your mother. Handle it privately? I don't have a wife like her, and I don't have a cowardly son like you. Dad, I'm begging you." Aaron cried. "Regardless of everything, she raised me, she took care of you for decades. Tom was your brother-in-arms. If this gets out, you'll be the one humiliated as the cuckold. How will you face anyone at the HOA or the VFW? Think about me. Think about this family. I'm begging you, Mia, say something to defend Mom. Don't be so cruel. Aaron, you're so used to hiding behind your mother's skirt that your worldview is that narrow," I replied. "You call me cruel? While your mother stole my hard-earned money and my gold to fund her lover? Did she think about our family bond when she brought him into the heritage study? Did she think about your pride? Or your father's pride? Now that it's exposed, you want to force me to swallow this poison just to protect your career? You have no right to lecture me. Richard, I know I was wrong. I'll never do it again. Don't kick me out." Susan wailed. "I'm old. If you kick me out, where will I go? Aaron is right, Richard, airing our dirty laundry will only embarrass us. I promise I'll cut all ties with Tom. I'll be your maid, I'll serve you and Mia for the rest of my life to pay for my sins. Have pity on Aaron, he's about to get promoted. Shut up. You have no right to call this a family anymore." Richard yelled. "You're afraid you won't have a place to live? Tom already used Mia's money to buy land and build a cabin upstate. Just go up there and be his queen. Listen to me very closely, Susan. From this second forward, you are no longer my wife. You are no longer part of the Sterling family. I am filing for divorce immediately. Pack your bags and get the hell out of this house tonight. Don't take a single thing of value, not even a rag. And you, Tom, get out of my house before I beat you to death with this cane. Tomorrow, I'm taking this video to the HOA board and the city council. I'm going to throw it in their faces so they can see exactly who their vice president is. I will expose both of you to this entire town. I would rather suffer the embarrassment of being cheated on than live with a whore of a wife and a traitor for a friend." "No! No, Richard, you can't do that. That's the same as killing me. I beg you. Mia, please talk to him. I'll pay you back. I'll force Tom to sell the land and return your money. Forgive me, please." "You don't need to beg me, Susan, because the decision is Richard's," I said coldly. "But rest assured. The money and gold you stole from me? I will take legal action to get it back, down to the last cent. This house is my personal asset, bought before the marriage. The deed is solely in my name. Since Richard has decided to kick you out, I, as the homeowner, have no reason to harbor someone who has no legal or moral ties to me anymore. Leaving empty-handed is already a very light punishment." "Mia, you're crossing the line," Aaron shouted. "Regardless of everything, this is our marital home. What right do you have to kick my mother out? Dad is just angry, that's why he's saying that. Stop adding fuel to the fire. You're the daughter-in-law, you have an obligation to care for your mother-in-law. If you dare kick her out, I'll sue you." "Who exactly are you going to sue?" "You ungrateful brat." Richard spat. "This house was bought with Mia's money. You didn't contribute a single dime. What right do you have to speak? You feel sorry for your mother? Then pack your bags and leave with her. Get out of my sight, all of you. I don't have a cowardly son who would sell his father's dignity for a deputy director title. Get out. Get out right now. That night, a torrential, unexpected rain battered the New York skyline. The heavy drops hammered against the glass windows of the mansion, as if washing away the filth that had just been exposed. My father-in-law kept his oath as a former Marine. He refused to let Susan take any valuables. Susan was forced out of the gated community's gates with nothing but a duffel bag containing a few ragged clothes and her cell phone. The woman who was once so powerful, whose glare was as sharp as a bullet, now trudged through the pouring rain. She looked pathetic, no different from a beggar kicked off the steps of a church. However, greed and delusion often strip people of their common sense. In her deep desperation, Susan didn't call her relatives, nor did she dare go to her own family out of shame. Her last remaining hope was pinned entirely on her lover, Tom. She was convinced that with the $150,000 and the gold bars she had stolen from me to build his lake house, he would welcome her with open arms and build a palace of love together, just like the sweet promises he whispered on the rug of the heritage study. I didn't need to follow her to know what happened next. A private investigator I had hired a month ago to gather evidence had quietly tailed her, sending me every audio recording and photograph of that humiliating night. At past 11 p.m., Susan took an expensive Uber ride almost 40 miles upstate, standing in front of the iron gates of a half-built cabin. She pounded on the gates in the wind and rain. It took almost 20 minutes before Tom finally appeared. But he didn't open the gate. He stood behind the iron bars, wearing a raincoat, a cigarette dangling from his lips. His gaze toward Susan no longer held a shred of affection, only a deep, freezing contempt. Tom, open the gate. Richard kicked me out. I have nothing left. Honey, open the door. I'm freezing out here. I'm soaked. Get lost. What the hell are you doing coming here in the middle of the night? Do you want Richard to literally kill me? Everything was ruined because of you. I haven't even settled the score with you yet, and you dare show up here? What do you mean? You promised me. You said when this cabin was finished, you'd make me your queen here. The money for the land, the materials, all of that was the money I took from my daughter-in-law for you. Now I have nothing. You have to take responsibility. Take me in. Open the gate. Tom took a deep drag of his cigarette, blew the smoke into the air, and burst into laughter, the cruel laugh of a scumbag who had finally dropped his HOA VP facade. Take responsibility? Are you insane, Susan? What we had was just playing around. Having fun. You said your husband was old and weak. You came to me for satisfaction. I serviced you. You gave me cash. We're even. The deed to this land is in my name. You gave me that money voluntarily. What law says I have to take in a tramp who got kicked out by her husband? You bastard. You used me and threw me away. You conned me out of my money and my feelings. If you don't open this door, I'm going to scream, so everyone around here knows exactly who you are. I'll call the cops. You embezzled my daughter-in-law's assets. At this point, the lover's truly vicious nature revealed itself. He stepped closer to the gate, staring dagger-like into Susan's terrified, wide eyes. His voice dropped into a dark threat. You want to call the cops? Go ahead. But before you do, you might want to watch the videos I secretly recorded every time we messed around in those cheap motels off the highway. Videos of you in action. Videos of you trashing your own family. I saved everything in high def. Listen to me very carefully. I need cash to finish this cabin. Get me another $50,000 as hush money. You're blackmailing me? You recorded me secretly? I don't have any money left. No money? Then figure it out. Borrow from a loan shark, beg your rich daughter-in-law, or rob a bank. I don't care. If I don't see $50K in my account in 3 days, I'm blasting those sex tapes to every single member of the HOA. And I'll mail a copy straight to Aaron's boss at City Hall. Let's see if your precious son can keep his deputy director title then, and if you'll ever have the face to live in New York again. Now get lost. Before I let the dogs out. The man spat into a muddy puddle, turned his back, and walked inside, leaving Susan frozen outside the gate. She collapsed into the mud. Her agonizing wails blended with the booming thunder. The great preacher of false morality had finally choked on the filthy trap of her own lust and greed. The next morning, as the soft morning sunlight pierced the windows, the house was quiet again. But it was the quiet of a battlefield after an earthquake. Richard locked himself in his room on the second floor, refusing to see anyone. Meanwhile, after waking up and enjoying a cup of black coffee without sugar, I calmly prepped my files for my afternoon bank meetings. Just then, the front door opened. Aaron walked in, looking more pathetic than I had ever seen him. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were sunken and bloodshot. The suit he wore yesterday was heavily wrinkled and smelled of cheap cigarettes. After being kicked out last night, he had gone after his mother. But obviously, he was utterly incapable of solving the massive crisis she had created. Seeing me sitting cross-legged on the sofa, looking calm, elegant, and dressed in a tailored designer suit, the hatred in Aaron's eyes flared up. He marched toward me and slammed his car keys onto the glass table. "Are you happy now, Mia? You destroyed this family. You backed my mother into a corner. You're thrilled, aren't you? Aaron, did you forget to take your meds, or is your brain waterlogged from the rain? Did I destroy your family? Or did your mother and the next-door neighbor destroy your family's honor? I'm the one who lost money and gold. Yet, instead of demanding justice for your wife, you come home and bark at me? Shut up! Stop using your money to bully people. Do you know how much my mother suffered last night? Tom kicked her out. He even extorted her for $50,000. He threatened to leak her sex tapes to the internet and send them to my office. You're my wife. When your husband's family is in a crisis, you don't help, you just sit there making sarcastic remarks. I burst out laughing. It was a crisp laugh, but filled to the brim with disdain. This man's shamelessness had truly surpassed my wildest imagination. Wait, let me get this straight. Your mother cheated. She stole my money to fund her lover. Then she got recorded and blackmailed by her lover. And now, you come in here acting like my boss, demanding I fork over $50,000 of my hard-earned money to shut her lover up. All to protect your $80,000 a year deputy director title? Are you assuming I'm an idiot, or are you just hallucinating? You are the daughter-in-law of this family. The money you make is our joint marital asset. The family's reputation is on the line. You have a responsibility to pay up and fix this. I know you have millions in investments. 50 grand is pocket change to you. If you don't pay up to save my mom, and this scandal reaches my office if I lose my promotion, I will make your life a living hell. You're threatening me, Aaron? Your pathetic salary isn't even enough to cover the property taxes and utilities. It doesn't cover the maintenance on the BMW you drive. Or the expensive dinners you buy to kiss your boss's ass. All of that comes out of my pocket. You live attached to me like a leech. Your family drained me like parasites. Yet you still hallucinate that you're the head of the household who can order me around? Mia! Just because you make more money doesn't mean you can trample on my pride. No matter how smart you are, you're still a woman, and you have to submit to your husband. I am your husband, and I command you to wire $50,000 into my account immediately so I can fix my mother's mess. If you don't, I'll expose everything. I'll tell everyone you framed your mother-in-law. You used your wealth to bribe Tom and ruin her. Let's see if you can keep your fancy Wall Street director job then. I shook my head slowly. My icy stare pierced straight through his face, which was contorted with ego and cowardice. Aaron didn't care about his father's humiliation. He didn't care about the betrayal I had suffered. He only cared about sweeping the scandal away so his career could advance. And worse, he wanted to use my money to clean up his mother's trash. My final shred of patience was gone. This coward didn't deserve an ounce of mercy anymore. It was time to show all my cards and shatter his cheap, putrid ego into a million pieces. I calmly stood up, walked to my designer bag resting neatly on the console table. I opened it and pulled out a stack of documents secured in a plastic folder. The rustle of the paper in the silence signaled the end. I walked back to the table and tossed the folder directly in front of Aaron. The smack of it hitting the glass was loud enough to make him flinch and step back. $50,000 to save your mother's shredded reputation and your little promotion? It's a shame. I don't make it a habit to run a charity for traitors. Open the folder and read it. Aaron frowned. He picked up the folder and pulled out several thick, legally bound documents. He only read the first few lines before his hands began to tremble. His face morphed from angry red to dead pale, then ashen gray. It was a divorce petition, already signed by me. Attached to it were a series of internal bank statements that only a branch manager with my clearance could access. And the most devastating pieces were copies of loan agreements from offshore sportsbooks and illegal bookies, all under his name. You want a divorce? Why? How? How do you have these copies? Did you think I only installed cameras to catch your mother? Did you think I didn't know what you were doing behind my back? You say I have a responsibility to this family as a wife. So when you secretly withdrew $300,000 from our joint savings account, wired it to illegal crypto trading platforms and into the account of a woman named Chloe, your ex-girlfriend, and lost it all. Did you consider me your wife then? I stepped closer to him. My aura completely dominated the man who stood taller than me. Every word I spoke was a surgical scalpel, flaying open the filth he had kept hidden. Did you think transferring money through shell accounts would fool someone who's worked in high finance for 10 years? You took heavy losses. You borrowed from bookies and loan sharks to rob Peter to pay Paul. Right now, you are over $300,000 in debt. That is the real reason you're so desperate to keep your promotion. Because you plan to use that title to run a kickback scam and find investors for fake city projects to pay off your debts, didn't you? Aaron stumbled backward. His legs could no longer support him. He collapsed onto the sofa. His empty eyes stared at the papers scattered on the table. The entire mask of the perfect husband, the clean public servant, was ripped to shreds. Mia. I'm sorry. I was scammed. They scammed me. I don't want a divorce, Mia. If you divorce me, the debt collectors will show up at City Hall. I'll lose everything. Please help me. You have so much money. A few $100,000 is nothing to you. I promise, from now on, I'll obey you. Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it. I'll be your slave. Your family sure loves using that phrase when you're backed into a corner, I scoffed. But I don't need a slave, I need freedom from this nest of parasites. Listen to me very carefully. This house was my premarital asset. The deed is in my name. The money you embezzled? I've already filed a report with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. And your mother, she stole my gold and diamonds. My corporate lawyers have already filed criminal theft charges. I paused, staring straight into his desperate, panicked eyes, and delivered the coldest, most ruthless ultimatum. Now, you have two choices. 1. Sign the divorce papers peacefully. Walk out of my house empty-handed and handle your debts yourself. I will consider not pushing the criminal embezzlement charges against you. 2. If you refuse, tomorrow morning, every single proof of your debt, illegal gambling, and wire fraud will be sitting on the desk of the mayor's ethics committee. And you and your mother can hold hands as you walk into federal prison. Choose. The living room fell dead silent. Aaron shook violently. The tears of a coward fell, staining the divorce papers. There were no more excuses. No more threats. Faced with the absolute power of evidence, the law, and the ruthlessness of a woman whose dreams had been shattered, the man's weakness was fully exposed. Aaron slowly picked up the pen on the table. His shaking hand scribbled a messy signature on the bottom line of the document. Divorced. As the tip of the pen lifted from the page, I knew the cage that had trapped me for 5 years was officially broken. I had single-handedly destroyed the illusions of the people who dared trample on my sweat and my pride. The cleanup was only halfway done, but the darkest chapter of my life was officially closed. The front door shut behind Aaron, taking with it the shattered shadow of a loser. The signed divorce papers lay on the glass table. I stared at them, the corners of my lips curling into a slight smile. They thought one signature would free them of accountability, allowing them to retreat in their cowardice. No. The real legal bloodbath was just beginning. A greedy, habitual parasite like Aaron, especially when spurred on by desperate people, wouldn't walk away empty-handed so easily. Just as I expected, 3 days after the divorce petition was filed in state Supreme Court, I received a call from Aaron's newly retained lawyer. It seemed he had borrowed money from anywhere he could to hire a sleazy, aggressive divorce attorney to try and claim half of my massive assets. Aaron wanted to flip the script. He filed a countersuit, demanding the court split the elite Westchester mansion 50/50 and freeze all my bank accounts on the ridiculous grounds of marital property, claiming his contributions to the household entitled him to it. I didn't panic for a single second. In the corporate finance world I had navigated for a decade, I had dealt with men like Aaron trying to weaponize the law to steal every single day. I called Mr. Vance, the head of legal at my investment bank, an Ivy League heavyweight, who had mentored my entire career. The first mediation session took place in a high-end conference room at Mr. Vance's Manhattan firm. I wore a custom-tailored black power suit, my hair in a sharp updo, radiating calm, lethal authority. Across the mahogany table, Aaron sat hunched over next to his lawyer, a slick 40-something man with oily skin and sly, overconfident eyes named Ken. Aaron didn't dare make eye contact with me. He just stared at his hands beneath the table. "Good afternoon, Miss Mia." "Good afternoon, Mr. Vance." "We are all professionals here, so I'll get straight to the point," Ken began. "My client, Mr. Aaron, agrees to the divorce. However, regarding the assets, the Westchester property was closed on 3 months after the wedding date. Under New York equitable distribution laws, this is automatically presumed to be marital property. My client is demanding 50% of the home's equity, which equates to roughly $2.5 million, plus half the savings accounts. If you agree, we can sign the settlement today. The divorce will be expedited, keeping everyone's reputation intact." Hearing those shameless words, I could only laugh inwardly. They really thought I was just some dumb woman who only knew how to make money, but not how to protect it. I calmly picked up my glass of sparkling water and took a sip. My gaze swept over the sleazy lawyer trying to act tough, then landed on Aaron. "Aaron, you went deeper into debt just to hire a lawyer, but you didn't even tell him the truth? Or are you genuinely hallucinating that you contributed to that house by living off my salary, making me pay the utility bills, and suddenly feeling entitled to it?" "Miss Mia, there's no need for personal attacks," Ken interrupted smoothly. "The law operates on documentation. The deed's date is post-marriage. You cannot deny that. My client, despite having a lower income, contributed to maintaining the marital home. Seeking an equitable split is perfectly legal and justified." That was when Mr. Vance, sitting beside me, smiled. It was a smile of pure pity directed at an incompetent colleague. He slowly opened his leather briefcase, pulled out a thick stack of documents, and dropped them heavily into the center of the table. "Counselor Ken, how long have you been practicing law to do such a sloppy discovery on your client? You said the law operates on documentation. Very well. Let's speak with documentation. Please review this prenuptial agreement." Ken frowned, picking up the document. Beside him, Aaron jolted, his face draining of color. Prior to the marriage, our client, Miss Mia, required Mr. Aaron to sign this ironclad prenuptial agreement in front of a notary. It explicitly states that the entire $5 million used to purchase the property were Miss Mia's sole and separate funds. The home was closed post-marriage strictly due to a construction delay by the developer. The source of the funds is definitively proven via Miss Mia's personal bank statements dating back prior to the marriage. By law, assets acquired with separate property funds, even during the marriage, remain separate property. Mr. Aaron did not contribute a single red cent. On what legal basis is he demanding half? The opposing lawyer went dead silent. He flipped through the pages, staring at the red notary stamps. Sweat began to bead on his forehead. He shot a furious glare at Aaron, who was shrinking into his chair as his lie was exposed. But I didn't give them a second to breathe. I launched the final strike, obliterating the pathetic husband's dream of a payday. Counselor Ken, you seem very concerned with marital property. If that's the case, I will also be fully transparent regarding the marital assets Mr. Aaron has contributed over the past 5 years. Mr. Vance, please hand him the second set of statements. Mr. Vance pulled out another thick stack of papers and tossed them to Ken. This is the joint savings account managed by Mr. Aaron. Over the past 12 months, Mr. Aaron withdrew a total of $300,000, wiring it to illegal, offshore crypto platforms and to an account belonging to a woman named Chloe Roberts, his ex-girlfriend. But wait, there's more. Here are 3 promissory notes from known illegal sports bookies, totaling $200,000. All under Mr. Aaron's name, specifically for gambling. This dissipation of marital assets is a severe breach of fiduciary duty. It borders on criminal wire fraud. Miss Mia not only has zero obligation to split her assets, but we are actively filing a civil suit against Mr. Aaron to claw back the $300,000 he embezzled. Ken's face transformed from confused to horrified. He realized he was defending a man who didn't just have nothing, but was drowning in debt and potential criminal charges. He slammed the file down on the table, glaring at Aaron with absolute rage. Aaron, you hid a liability of this magnitude from me, and asked me to demand a payout. You wanted to drag me in as an accomplice to a fraud attempt? I am dropping this case immediately. The retainer fee? Consider it charity. Saying that, the sleazy lawyer hurriedly grabbed his briefcase, stood up, and stormed out of the conference room, leaving a panicked Aaron trying to reach out and stop him. The room now held only me, Mr. Vance, and the pathetic loser known as my soon-to-be ex-husband. Aaron dropped his head onto the mahogany table. He gripped his hair with both hands, his whole body shaking. He had miscalculated catastrophically. He thought my patience over the years was because I was stupid. Because I depended on him. He had no idea that as an investment banker, every single dollar I spent had a documented origin and was protected by law. I had built an impenetrable legal safety net around myself from the very first day I entered the Sterling family. Aaron, your little extortion script failed. I will give you one last chance. Withdraw this garbage countersuit. Show up to court, sign the decree, and take your debts with you. If I don't see a notice of withdrawal from the court by tomorrow morning, I am officially handing the evidence of your $300,000 embezzlement over to the FBI and the NYPD. When that happens, you won't be receiving divorce papers. You'll be receiving an arrest warrant. Think carefully. I stood up, smoothed out my suit without sparing him a single glance, and walked out of the room with absolute authority. Behind me lay only the total ruin of a man who had destroyed his own life through greed and deceit. This legal battle was won before it even began. New York entered late December. The bitter winter chill crept into every corner of the city. For me, after disposing of Aaron's garbage lawsuit, life felt like it was returning to normal. I focused all my energy on my career on Wall Street. But a tree craves peace, while the wind refuses to stop. Cowards always resort to the dirtiest tactics when cornered. And this time, it wasn't Aaron who showed up, but the woman who had been thrown to the streets by her own actions, Susan, my mother-in-law. Ever since she was kicked out by Richard and blackmailed by her lover, Susan had become essentially homeless without money, without reputation, and bearing the ultimate mark of shame. But with a nature accustomed to manipulating people through fake morality, she decided to play her final card, using public pressure to extort money from me. She assumed that a Wall Street bank director like me would be terrified of gossip, terrified of a PR nightmare, and would pay her off just to keep things quiet. It was a Monday morning. The lobby of my bank in Manhattan was packed. The tellers were busy with high-net-worth clients. I was standing on the mezzanine balcony discussing portfolios with my VP when a piercing shriek echoed from the main revolving doors. Help! Someone help an old woman. Everyone bear witness. The director of this bank is a demon. She kicked her own mother-in-law out onto the streets. She's starving me to death. Every teller, client, and security guard instantly froze. All eyes turned toward the entrance. Susan appeared looking utterly wretched. Her clothes were torn and filthy. Her hair was a tangled mess. Her eyes looked manic. She pushed her way inside, collapsing onto the polished marble floor, beating the ground with her fists while wailing dramatically. She thinks she has money. She framed me. She forced my husband to divorce me and stole all my family's assets. Look at her, everybody. She wears designer suits in an air-conditioned office while her mother-in-law digs through the trash. A cruel, ungrateful bitch like her doesn't deserve to be a director. She scammed my family, she's definitely scamming her clients' money too. The lobby descended into chaos. Several clients pulled out their smartphones to record. Whispers broke out everywhere. For a financial institution, reputation is everything. And Susan was trying to assassinate mine using the dirtiest trick in the book. Security guards rushed over, trying to help her up. Ma'am, please. This is a place of business. Please keep the peace. If you have a legal issue, handle it in court. Don't cause a scene here. Let me escort you out. I won't leave. You all work for Mia. I'm going to sit right here. Call your director down so she can face me. I'm going to expose that venomous snake to the whole world. Mia, come down here. Give me back my house. Give me back my money. From the balcony, I watched the cheap soap opera play out. Instead of the panic or embarrassment she was expecting, I only felt a profound pity for a character who was rotten to her very core. I signaled my VP and the head of security to follow me. I slowly descended the glass staircase. The click of my stilettos echoed with a steady rhythm. My aura was cold and dominating. I didn't blink. The crowd naturally parted as I approached the woman rolling on the floor. Susan looked up at me. She screamed louder, trying to lunge at my legs, but was restrained by two massive security guards. Let her speak, gentlemen, I said smoothly. Let her finish her little performance. I stopped 2 feet away from her, looking down at her. My voice was crystal clear and authoritative, easily heard by the hundreds of people in the lobby. Susan. You came here begging for my money and my house. You're using the title of mother-in-law to garner public sympathy. Fine. If you want everything out in the open, I will gladly help you strip it all bare. I turned to my secretary and gave a nod. She immediately stepped forward, carrying a stack of thick folders. She pulled out crisp, high-quality color prints and handed them to the security guards, placing a stack on a nearby counter so any interested client could see. Ladies and gentlemen, valued clients, and staff. The woman throwing a tantrum on the floor is indeed my former mother-in-law. But she was not kicked out because I am cruel. She was kicked out by her own husband, a retired U.S. Marine general, because she brought her lover to commit adultery inside his family's heritage study. Not only that, she embezzled household funds and stole 5 solid gold American Eagle bars belonging to me to fund that exact lover. The documents you see here are the wire transfer receipts proving she sent $150,000 to her lover, as well as the official NYPD police report I filed for grand larceny. The lobby erupted. The smartphones recording the scene zoomed in on the printed evidence. High-res photos captured from the security cameras were passed around. The whispers that were previously sympathetic instantly morphed into scoffs and disgust directed entirely at Susan. Susan was stunned. Her face went sheet white. She never expected I would have the evidence pre-prepared at my office, and more importantly, she never imagined I would be ruthless enough to publicly air her dirty laundry in a corporate setting. She thought I was afraid of losing face, but I had discarded my polite mask a long time ago. Susan, you wanted to use a mob to force me to pay your blackmailer? You wanted to turn my Wall Street bank into a flea market for your begging? You picked the wrong woman. I am a bank director. I operate on law, evidence, and transparency. Your actions today not only defame my character, but they disrupt a federally regulated financial institution. I turned to my head of security. My voice was absolute. Call the NYPD. Press charges for disturbing the peace, interfering with business operations, and criminal defamation. Hand over all the lobby CCTV footage to the detectives. I am officially pressing charges against this woman. Today, you walked in here as an extortionist. In a few minutes, you will leave in the back of a squad car. Hearing the words NYPD and squad car, Susan's fake bravery evaporated, replaced by sheer terror. She thrashed, trying to crawl toward the exit, but the security guards already had her surrounded. The wail of police sirens echoed from the Manhattan streets, growing louder. The glass doors slid open. NYPD officers rushed in, quickly assessed the situation, reviewed the evidence I handed them, and immediately placed Susan in handcuffs. The cold steel clicked shut around the hypocrite's wrists. She screamed and cried, looking back at me with eyes filled with absolute dread and despair. But I just stood there, hands clasped in front of me, my eyes as calm as a frozen lake. Watching her get dragged to the patrol car. The slap I delivered to her wasn't physical. It was the crushing weight of the law and the truth, a knockout blow that extinguished the last flicker of hope for a criminal who tried to survive through sheer shamelessness. 3 months later, in the dead of the New York winter, inside a stiflingly warm courtroom at the state Supreme Court, 2 divorce verdicts were read on the exact same day. My divorce suit against Aaron, and Richard's divorce suit against Susan. It was fate, or more accurately, the inevitable collapse of a family that had rotted from the inside out. I entered the courtroom in a sharp gray suit, calm and commanding, flanked by Mr. Vance. Across the aisle, the Sterling family arrived looking utterly decimated. Richard wore an old suit, his posture stooped, his hair having gone entirely white in just a few months. Aaron, my ex-husband, sat hunched over, looking emaciated and exhausted. And Susan, escorted in by bailiffs from a holding cell, was present for her own divorce proceedings. She looked hollow and shook constantly. The session began with Richard's case. With a trembling but firm voice, he presented the undeniable proof of infidelity. Defendant Susan Sterling, do you contest this evidence? The judge asked. No, Your Honor. I was wrong, but I beg for mercy. I was tricked. Your Honor, I demand an absolute divorce, Richard stated. This woman trampled on my family's honor and desecrated our home. I petitioned the court to strip her of any rights to our marital assets. The verdict was swift. The court granted Richard's divorce. Because Susan was entirely at fault and was currently facing felony theft charges, the judge ruled she was not entitled to any portion of their marital home or pensions. She had officially lost everything. Next was my case. Mr. Vance presented the ironclad prenup, the proof of Aaron's $300,000 embezzlement for gambling and his ex-girlfriend, and the promissory notes to the loan sharks. Defendant Aaron Sterling, what is your response to the plaintiff's demand that you repay the $300,000 and assume sole responsibility for your personal debts? Your Honor, I admit I took the money, but it was for investments. To provide for the family. I can't pay it back now. I beg the court. Mia is a bank director. That money means nothing to her. Please divide the debt between us. We were husband and wife. Scoffs echoed from the gallery. His cowardly excuse insulted basic common sense. I stood up, looking directly at the judge. Your Honor, marriage is built on honesty and respect. The defendant did not contribute, he actively embezzled joint assets, breached his fiduciary duty, and endangered our financial stability. I petition the court to apply equitable distribution based on egregious fault. The party who commits fraud does not have the right to demand their victims share the burden of their crimes. The judge nodded, reviewing the mountain of airtight evidence. Bang! The gavel fell. The court granted my divorce. Aaron was ordered to repay the $300,000 he embezzled. All personal debts incurred by the defendant were ruled his sole and separate responsibility. The gavel struck for the final time. Aaron collapsed into his chair. He had no house, no assets, and was now saddled with over $500,000 in debt. On the other side, Susan was handcuffed and led back to lockup to await her criminal trial. Richard walked heavily out of the courtroom, his shoulders bearing the ultimate disgrace of the family name he once took so much pride in. I stepped out of the courthouse, standing on the stone steps, welcoming the pale winter sun. The wind caught the edge of my suit jacket, but I didn't feel cold. I took a deep breath, tasting freedom, justice, and a new life that I had reclaimed with the necessary courage and ruthlessness. All debts were paid in full. The parasites had been permanently eradicated from my peaceful sky. Closing the heavy courtroom doors behind me, I walked slowly down the stone steps of the Supreme Court. The biting winter air hit my face, but strangely, I felt no chill. Instead, every gust of wind felt like it was sweeping away the lingering dust of a long, dark, and suffocating journey. I stopped, closed my eyes, and tilted my face up to the pale yet warm sun shining down from the vast sky. My chest felt impossibly light. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of freedom air that was no longer polluted by the stench of lies, cheap schemes, and boundless greed. The greatest hurricane of my life had finally passed. Standing at the crossroads, watching the busy New Yorkers rush by, my mind drifted to the past. Looking back on 5 years locked in a cage called marriage, I asked myself, how much of my youth and self-worth did I throw away just to maintain a mask of fake harmony? I used to be a woman who swallowed her tears, biting my tongue to obey the ridiculous rules of a hypocritical mother-in-law. I was naive enough to believe that if I poured out my soul, my sweat, and my money for my husband's family, I could buy their genuine respect and love. I pacified myself, defending the cowardice of a weak man, thinking that if I was strong enough to shield him, we would forever have a warm home. But life isn't a fairy tale. Misplaced kindness is the sharpest knife, and it will eventually slice your own throat. When I witness that filthy desecration in the most sacred room of the house, when I read the texts about wiring my money to fund an affair, and most agonizingly, when I watch the man who shared my bed kneel and beg me to stay silent just to protect his sleazy promotion, that was when my heart shattered into a million pieces. But from those shattered pieces, a new version of me was born. Resurrection often requires excruciating pain, but it is necessary. I realized that submission will never earn you understanding from those with wicked hearts. Unconditional sacrifice, in the eyes of the greedy, is just a free commodity to be exploited until it runs dry. When I decided to cast that video to the big screen, when I threw the financial evidence and the divorce papers in my bastard husband's face, it wasn't just revenge. It was a battle cry of liberation. The awakening of a woman who had suffered far too long, who decided to tear down her own cage to reclaim ownership of her life. I transformed from a weak woman who tried to buy peace with money into a sharp, cold warrior who knew how to weaponize the law and her intellect to protect herself. Some might ask, after leaving my ex-husband's family utterly destroyed, homeless, drowning in debt, and facing prison, do I feel satisfied? Honestly, I don't feel satisfied. I feel profoundly relieved. The relief of someone who just dropped a 1,000-ton weight off their back. I let go, not to forgive their crimes, because some sins never deserve forgiveness. I let go to free my own soul, so I no longer have to carry the venom that was eating away at my future. Through this brutal ordeal, I learned deep, bloody lessons that I will never forget as long as I live. And I want to share them with everyone listening to this story, especially women, my sisters, my friends who have loving hearts but are sometimes too weak when faced with the word family. The greatest lesson is financial independence and legal literacy. Money isn't everything, but money is the strongest suit of armor that will protect you from the storms of life. Never place your entire life and assets into someone else's hands just because of a marriage certificate. The prenuptial agreement I signed, the meticulously documented bank statements, those are what saved my life from being robbed blind. Ladies, remember this: love can fade, human hearts can change, but the numbers in your bank account and the legal documents in your name will never betray you. Work hard. Be economically independent. Because only when you stand on your own 2 feet do you have the right to dictate your life, and the right to point your finger haughtily at wicked people and say, no. The second, incredibly painful lesson is knowing the limits of your kindness. We are often taught that women must sacrifice and be patient to keep a family together. But blind patience in the face of malice and disrespect is psychological suicide. A true family is built on respect, understanding, and partnership. It is not an exploitation ring where you are treated as an emotionless ATM. Never harbor the illusion that your magnanimity can change people who are inherently greedy and vile. When you discover betrayal, do not blame yourself. They are the ones who are wrong. Your job isn't to cry or beg, but to keep a cool head, gather the evidence, and deliver a knockout blow to excise the tumor from your life. Kindness without sharp thorns to protect it is just an easy meal for ruthless wolves. And finally, I realized the absolute truth about karma. Karma isn't magic. Karma exists in every action and choice we make. The Sterling family, once highly respected, was pulverized into disgrace. The mother-in-law lost everything and faces a jail cell. The cowardly husband is drowning in massive debt, lost an incredible wife, and lives in humiliation. That didn't happen because I was cruel, it was the inevitable harvest of the greed, lies, and hypocrisy they sowed themselves. They dug their own graves with their dirty schemes. I was simply the one who tossed the final shovel of dirt over their sins. Walking away from that rotten marriage, I don't consider it a failure. I consider it graduating summa cum laude from the University of Maturity. I discarded the unworthy, taking out the trash to make room for the most beautiful flowers to bloom in the garden of my life. Life out there is still full of beautiful things, new opportunities, and new horizons waiting for me. A divorce decree isn't an ending. It is a ticket to a new chapter where you can be yourself proud, free, and shining brighter than ever. Today, I wake up in my peaceful home, sipping a cup of fragrant tea I brewed myself, my heart light and tranquil. I will keep working, keep striving, and keep loving. But I will love myself first, and only give my love to those who truly deserve it. The storm has passed, the sky is blue again. And I know this peaceful sky is my own masterpiece, built with my strength and my resilience. Listening up to this point, what feelings arise in your heart? Have you ever felt the weight of injustice, of unrequited sacrifice within your own home? Have you ever been torn between continuing to endure or standing up to shatter the mask of hypocrisy and reclaim your freedom? Remember, life is incredibly short. Don't waste it on tears and people who aren't worth it. Share your stories, or leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. I will always be here, listening and understanding alongside you. If today's story brought you a sense of solidarity, a bit of strength, or a lesson to walk a little taller, please don't hesitate to hit the like button. Share this video with the women in your life to give them encouragement. And don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so we can meet again and share more deep, dramatic life stories in our upcoming videos.